We're sitting here with Peter Speake-Marin of Peter Speake-Marin Watches. Hello Peter, good morning, how are you?
Extremely well, nice to be here.
Thank you for coming, I really appreciate it. I'm excited to interview you today. I think this has been like a dream of mine for the last year. Your success is just, it's remarkable where you started, where you came from, and where you're going. If you wouldn't mind just kind of filling in my viewers a little bit about your history and where you come from and the journey you're on, I'd really appreciate it.
I was born in England. My nationality is English. I started off in Hackney Technical College in 1987. Since studying in London, I've studied in Switzerland. I've worked in after-sales service in England for a multitude of different companies. I then spent 7 years in restoration of antique watches, where most of my influences come from today. Following Switzerland, following London, I went to Switzerland. And in Switzerland, I worked for a company called Renault Papi. And in Renault Papi, I did everything from being responsible for the building of tourbillons, involved in training, product development, a menagerie of different responsibilities. My nature is that I'm not very good at being stuck in one position for a long period of time. The moment that I've actually learned something, I need to move on to something else so that the learning curve can be continued. Since 2000, I became independent. I stopped being an employee for other companies. For the following 8 years, from 2000 to 2008, I simultaneously started to develop my own watches, and I continued to work for other companies, either as a designer, a consultant, a watchmaker, or a project manager. I was involved with one of the first collaborations I made was with Harry Winston. Following Winston, I worked with Maximilian Busset, helping him develop the horological machine #1. Following this, and also pretty much at the same time, towards the end of Max's project, I started to develop Maître du Temps for an American entrepreneur.
Wow, the chapter 1, correct?
And chapter 2.
And chapter 2.
I was involved in both of them. I set out all the basic foundation for the company and also for those projects, influencing the designs, the infrastructure, and educating everybody who was from outside of the industry or outside of the production technique how it actually works. It was an experience. Since 2008, I have concentrated solely on my own pieces, and I've been developing a caliber called the SM2. The SM2 now forms the new base for pretty much all of my future pieces. Prior to the SM2, I'd done an enormous amount of different work, from punching perpetuals, tourbillons, simple timepieces, calendars, engraved watches, unique pieces, maquillé executions. With the Marins, I now have a more structured, defined line to follow. The Marin 1 is a simple timepiece based on the SM2.
Which you have right here, right?
Which is an example here. This is the SM2. The case is polished titanium. The dial is 2-piece hard enamel. The hands are blued steel with superluminova inside. The case is the Piccadilly design case.
That's right.
And if I flip it over,
wow.
This is the automatic version of the SM2, the SM2A. The caliber is 100% my own. I've constructed the whole caliber from every screw, setting mechanism, balance, wheels, the overall design. It is a unique caliber. Everything is finished to the same level that you would conventionally find with high-end complications, minute repeaters, tourbillons, and grand sonories. Wow! But it is found here in this piece.
Now, do you find that your experience, obviously in Maître du Temps and Renault Papi and all these places you've been, of course, I'm sure have influenced you in your development of calibers, and I'm sure of cases and designs, not maybe in terms of aesthetics, but maybe in terms of mechanics?
My entire sort of life experience is becomes condensed into these watches. Stylistically, they're heavily influenced from my time in restoration. Technologically, I have worked with so many different companies, worked with so many different systems. I have a fairly in-depth understanding of what tool is actually best for making what job. There is the watch on my wrist. This piece is actually the Marin. Just to give an explanation, the Marin 1 Mark II. Technically, it's the same, but aesthetically, there's a difference. The difference is that in the center of the watch, the enamel dial, which you see on the Mark I, has been cut away to be able to reveal part of the movement. The movement's made of German silver.
Wow.
And I wanted to give this impression of hard enamel, blued steel, and German silver, because they're three pure metals.
Of course.
You have sorry, they're actually alloys, but they're metals, they're solid, they're strong. They're essentially, it's horology, it's watchmaking. By making that grill, I used a technique whereby the actual the grill was cut from hardened steel using lasers. I'd never done that before, and because of that step of actually using that particular manner of making that dial, I then used it to make the dial on the Thalassa, which is the Marin 2. So,
people, this is an exclusive. This is the first time I think, at least I've seen on a blog or a forum, someone who has the opportunity to see it live and to report about it. I'm very fortunate. Peter, I'm wetting myself right now. This is absolutely stunning. Look at that. The Piccadilly case, 42 millimeters, white gold.
The chapter ring is made from hardened blued steel, which
Okay.
is then hardened steel, which is then blued afterwards.
Okay.
The numbers and the minutes are cut out by laser, and then the superluminova is actually filled in from the back by hand, and all the circling and the angling is done by hand. As is the entire movement is entirely finished by hand. In the center, you have a sapphire, which is actually indexes the chapter ring, and that sapphire is made for me by the same company that makes all the jewels for me. Because everything is actually made for this caliber, I've developed some very interesting relationships with the different manufacturers. So the sapphire indexes the chapter ring, holds the hour wheel in place, and it allows me to print my name and the reference on the sapphire. And it also is not anti-reflective, so it does form, it does cloud just a little bit the mechanism underneath, so it doesn't really pop out, but you can see it. So it could risk, because there's so much going on in the watch, it could risk almost becoming too much. But by leaving it without an anti-reflective coating on the inside, not the outside, but the inside, it means that you have a very strong, congruent aesthetic.
Well, I think that's important because I think it's, watches are very definitive of personality as well, and a lot of times less is more, and I think had you kept that, it would have stuck out. It really would.
It would have become confusing.
Yeah.
Just an idea of, just to show you this is an example of the detail that goes into every element of the watch. The calendar here is a disc mechanism.
Right.
Okay? It's a conventional idea, but every number or every set of numbers is I designed specifically to be able to optimize the size of the window that it sits in. So there's not two which are exactly the same. So when you have single numbers, they become larger, and when you get to the doubles, they are adjusted in size independently to be able to optimize that space.
That's amazing.
It's just a small thing, but that kind of detail is what permeates the entire movement. You have a congruency in design from the forms of the bridges on the dial side that hold all of the calendar mechanism into place, and when we turn the watch over, you see all of the forms, all this very gothic styling, which came from the foundation watch, the very first watch that I made, a pocket watch tourbillon, where I really I started to develop my style, comes through in this timepiece. So what you're looking at here is you're looking at a manual wind, 32.6mm diameter movement, entirely finished by hand, unique to myself. Every component within this watch is finished by hand, assembled by hand, adjusted by hand. It is not something which is, and as a result, it's not mass produced. The quantities are tiny. I make less than 100 pieces a year. But as
as a total brand?
Presently. This year total should be between 100 and 120. Next year I'm hoping to go to about 150 pieces.
And this particular piece you're only making 30?
This is the Marin 2 Mark 1 called the Thalassa, and that the mechanical configuration will continue in the future. But with the blue chapter ring, this particular combination, there are only 30 pieces. The Marin 2 Mark 2 will have offset seconds, calendar, manual wind, 80-hour power reserve, like this one, but aesthetically it will morph, it'll change into something else. I don't know what that will be exactly, I have a stack of ideas. The ideas are always fairly simple, it's the execution which is what takes the time.